And I tend to be a good RCA pastor, and so I listen to the denomination says do it. And I sat with friends in the chapel week after week after week, and I said, Lord, give me the vision, because I don't have the vision, so that I can understand it and dramatize it and tell everybody what to do and charge off into the future. But even as I prayed it, I thought, this doesn't seem right. But the leaders are never wrong. But it didn't work. I never got it. And one day in that chapel, one of the guys I was praying with said, Phil, you know what the problem with this is? I said, I would like to know. And he said, if God gave you that vision, you would go charging off. And if God wanted to change that and adjust that, you would no longer be listening because you had the vision. I said, that sounds true. Well, we moved from visionary leader. In fact, the guy that wrote the book on the visionary leader that we all had to read later came back and said I was wrong. And I've always wanted to contact that guy and say, well, then I want my money back. But I did spend a lot of time praying, so it was all good. But here's where we are now. Here's where the church is. And for those of you that are leaders in places of authority, tell me if you think this is true. Don't tell me right now if I'm wrong. Tell me later. But I think this is right. Now what it is, it's servant leadership. Because really good leaders are doing this. They're saying, I am going to surround myself with the best people I can find. I'm going to trust them. I'm going to empower them. I'm going to encourage them. My job is to make them better leaders. And my job as a leader is to serve whoever I have authority over. It's not for what I want. It's not to pad my income. It's not to build myself a power base. But whether I'm building widgets or I'm leading a police department or you're the pastor of a church or the chair of the deacons, I only have one thing: what is best for the community, and then how can I help my leaders be best leaders? I saw a movie. And in one of our denominational meetings, if I ever get to lead another one here, I'm going to say, let's just watch this movie. And I was thinking about this movie this morning. I think it was called Mars. It was a planet. And so the guy gets left behind on the planet. The Martian. Like I said, the movie was called The Martian. And this guy gets left behind on Mars. And everybody leaves, they make a big mistake, and they all fly home. And the question is, how are they going to get the guy back? And so what did they do? Did they have a visionary leader that says, I got the idea, everybody shut up and listen to me? No. What he said was, let's get everybody together. And they drew things and they planned things and they listened to each other and they worked together and they argued and they agreed and they disagreed until the body came together and the leader listened to the group, listened to the team, and they got the guy home from, well, Mars. Okay? Isn't that something? Doesn't that sound like Jesus? Here is the Son of God. Here's the incarnate Messiah. And he says, I am going to be leading this group of disciples. I'm going to impart authority to you, and you're going to lead the church. And here's how you're going to do it. He goes, I'm not going to hang on to my Godhead. I'm going to empty myself. I'm not going to hang on to my power and authority as the person in the Godhead. I'm going to lay it down. And I am going to sacrifice myself for the body. And I will die if I have to make this possible. And that's what he did. And that's a good leader. I'm sure Jesus would be happy that I said that about him. Best leader that ever lived. When I was a young pastor, when the earth was yet cooling, in my town of Holland, Michigan, there was the Herman Miller Corporation, international creator of Herman Miller office furniture. They made a lot of cubicles. They made the Ames chair, arguably one of the most comfortable office chairs ever made. And Max Dupree and his brother were the CEOs of Herman Miller Incorporated. And I had an opportunity to spend time with Max Dupree, one of the two co-presidents. And he wrote some books. One was called Leading Without Power, Finding Hope in Serving Community. Another one was called Leadership is an Art. This one was written in the 80s. This was written in the 90s. And Max Dupree was decades ahead of American leadership theory and decades ahead of Christian leadership theory, because Max was a Christian. And he believed that his purpose as the CEO was to serve those people. Once a week, he would take his bag lunch. He'd go down on the floor where all of the manufacturing workers were having lunch, and he'd eat his lunch and he'd listen to what they had to say. It was undercover boss before it was even invented. And he didn't do it to be a big shot. He did it because that's what a good leader did. These are the people. They are choosing, they're volunteering to work for me. They say they weren't volunteering, they were getting paid pretty well. He goes, well, they can volunteer to be paid pretty well any place in the country, but they're working here. One day he was sitting there and one of the ladies said, Mr. Dupree, what do you have against adoptions? He said, I don't have anything against adoptions. What are you talking about? And she said, do you know, I'm just adopting a child, and if you give birth to a child, you get benefits and you get time off and you get release. I'm bringing a newborn home and I don't get any of those things. Have you ever thought about that? And he went up and rewrote the policy. Well, he didn't. He had somebody do it. Right? That's who we are. That's who we are as a pastor. That's who we are as elders. That's who we are as deacons. We have a representative form of government here. The Bible doesn't say here's how you have to organize yourself. It talks about elders, it talks about deacons, but God gives us freedom to organize the most effective way that we want to. But God gave authority to Christ. Christ gives authority to the church. And today, we take that God-given authority and we ordain, we lay hands on, and we install people into these offices. And we went through a time of prayer and discernment. We nominated them. We had a congregational meeting, and we ratified those nominations, and today we install them. And we give them power to make decisions. And it's a huge job, and it takes time, and it takes energy. And we are so grateful this morning that God has called these people, and these people have said, I'll do it. I will accept that call. I'll do what needs to be done by the power and the authority of the living God. And leaders lead. And we expect them to lead. And there's going to be easy decisions, and there's hard decisions, and big ones and small ones. But we trust these leaders. And we are thankful this morning. I'm thankful this morning that God has given us over the years, and again today, such good leaders. Because our leaders are leaders, they're not managers. Managers point out problems. And you've been with people that call themselves leaders, but they're only a manager. They say, well, that's wrong, and I've heard somebody that doesn't like that. Now, what are you going to do about that, Pastor? But our leaders are leaders. Managers point out problems. Leaders solve problems. They don't have to have all the answers. But they say, I've got an idea of a solution. Or let me lead us through a discussion of how the Holy Spirit can guide us. And together we make ourselves simple and still and humble because we are here to serve you. Every Sunday I will say, will the deacons please come forward to serve God's people? We say that very intentionally. It's a reminder. That's what our job is.